It always starts with silence, not the kind that's peaceful, but the kind that echoes through your chest, like a question with no answer. You check your phone, again, maybe you missed something. Maybe he's busy. Maybe there's a perfectly good reason he hasn't replied. But deep down, your heart whispers the one question you don't want to ask. Why is he ignoring me? There's a quiet ache that settles in a woman's body when the man she gave her softness to suddenly goes distant. It's not just about the missed messages or the unanswered calls. It's about the shift you feel in your soul, like something invisible has been taken from you. You replay every word you said. You wonder if you were too much, too emotional, too available, too real. You lie awake with that tightening in your chest, not from heartbreak, but from not knowing where you stand. And in the dark, your mind begins to spiral. Was I just a moment to him? Something fleeting, something forgettable? This pain isn't just yours. It's older than you. Carl Jung called it the collective unconscious, the shared emotional memory of all women who've ever felt unseen after giving everything sacred inside of them. It's the ache passed down from mothers and grandmothers who were taught to stay quiet, be sweet, and wait for a man's attention like it was something to be earned. And yet, in the middle of this emotional fog, something inside you flickers. A knowing, a memory, a quiet voice that says, "You were never the one who disappeared. He was. He's the one haunted by what he couldn't hold." Because here's the truth. When a woman who loves deeply begins to withhold her energy, when she stops reaching and starts remembering who she is, that silence becomes deafening, not to her, to him. Tonight, it's not you who will be haunted. It will be him, lying awake, wondering why your light no longer waits for him in the dark. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why that shift happens and how to reclaim your power in the most hauntingly beautiful way possible. There's a moment every woman knows, a moment that doesn't come with warning or sound. It arrives quietly when you sense something has shifted. He used to text back with warmth. He used to listen with presence. But now, his messages feel colder, slower, shorter, and sometimes they don't come at all. At first you try to rationalize it. Maybe he's busy, you tell yourself. Maybe he's just stressed. You keep your tone light. You don't want to seem too emotional, too sensitive, too much, so you play it cool. But inside, your thoughts are anything but. They spin like a storm behind your quiet smile. You find yourself rereading your last message, checking the timestamp, watching the screen like it might finally light up and give you some sense of reassurance. But it doesn't. And the longer the silence stretches, the louder your inner voice becomes. That voice, the one you've tried so hard to quiet, begins whispering old stories. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I'm the one who always cares more. And that's the ache that so many women carry, not just the sting of being ignored, but the shame that comes wrapped around it. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves that we push down, repress, deny. For many women, that shadow is formed in early love, when she learned that attention was conditional, that love was something to be earned through perfection, patience, self-sacrifice. So when a man begins to emotionally withdraw, that wound is triggered. Not just the pain of this man, but the deeper wound of every moment she's ever felt invisible, unwanted, too much, or not enough. She doesn't chase because she's desperate. She chases because she was trained to believe she must prove she's worthy of love. And so she overextends. She explains, justifies, reaches out, apologizes for things she didn't do, all in an effort to soothe a fear she's never been allowed to fully name. But here's what she doesn't realize yet. The more she tries to be good enough, the more she gives away the one thing that would actually make him feel her absence, her energy. Men don't become haunted by the woman who begged. They become haunted by the woman who remembered who she is and chose to protect her peace instead of proving her worth. Jung's concept of projection explains this beautifully. We project parts of ourselves onto others, our hope, our pain, our fear. And when they withdraw, we're not just reacting to them, we're confronting the parts of ourselves we don't fully own yet. That's why it hurts so deeply. That's why the silence feels like rejection. But something changes, something shifts, when a woman stops making his silence mean something about her, when she stops chasing closure and starts giving it to herself, when she understands that his withdrawal is not a reflection of her value, but of his own emotional limitations. Because the truth is, some men ignore you not because they don't care, but because they do, and they're scared. Scared of needing you, scared of being seen, scared of not being enough themselves, and so they distance. And that's when she must resist the pull to shrink herself to be chosen. Instead, she must expand into the woman she was before she tried to earn love. The woman who speaks softly but carries an energy that lingers. The woman who doesn't explain her absence, because her presence was always a gift. He will feel that. He will lie awake and wonder why you no longer wait for him in the silence. He will scroll through your photos, reread your old words, and feel the echo of a connection he didn't know how to hold. And it will haunt him, not because you disappeared, but because you stopped shrinking yourself to be seen. So if you're in that space right now, if your heart is tired, your mind is spinning, your worth feels fragile, I want you to hear this. You were never too much. You were never not enough. You were simply giving your light to someone who wasn't ready to receive it. But you are the kind of woman who lingers in memory, who softens the hardest hearts, who leaves traces of truth behind in every room she exits. And when you begin to stand in that knowing, when your silence comes from sovereignty, not pain, that's when the haunting begins. Not for you, for him. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how to respond when he pulls away, in a way that honors your worth, awakens his emotional memory, and begins to shift the entire dynamic between you and him. This isn't about playing games. This is about understanding something most people never get taught: the unconscious emotional patterns that drive male and female connection and disconnection. What you're experiencing when he withdraws isn't just about you. It's not even fully about him. It's the collision of two inner worlds. Carl Jung called it the anima and the animus, the feminine and masculine energies that live within us all. When a man meets a woman who activates his anima, the part of him that longs for deep connection, emotional presence, softness, it stirs something in him that feels both magnetic and terrifying. You see, most men aren't taught how to hold emotional vulnerability. Their ego, shaped by early wounds and a culture that equates detachment with power, is often still protecting an inner child who was never fully seen. So when he starts to feel something real, something deep, his defense mechanism kicks in and he pulls away. Not because you did anything wrong, but because closeness triggers the very vulnerability he spent years trying to avoid. But when you understand that this isn't rejection, it's a reflection of his emotional defenses, you stop taking it personally. You stop scrambling to fix it. You stop betraying yourself to earn back his attention, and that changes everything. Because the moment you begin to see the emotional code underneath the behavior, the ego, the fear, the unfinished stories, you reclaim your power. You stop reacting and start responding. Not with bitterness, but with the quiet confidence of a woman who knows her presence is a gift, not a plea. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share will help you shift the dynamic entirely, not by chasing him, but by returning to yourself. And in that return, something unexpected happens. He begins to feel the weight of your absence. the power of your calm, and the echo of the love he tried to ignore. And that's what haunts him most. There are 4 inner shifts that change everything, not just in how he sees you, but in how you see yourself. These aren't tactics to manipulate him. These are quiet revolutions in your energy. Each one is an unspoken language his psyche will feel, not because you force him to see your worth, but because you become impossible to forget. Let's begin. The first shift is this: mirror but don't mimic. When he pulls away, you don't chase. You soften your own energy to meet the truth of what's happening, but you don't collapse to match it. You let the silence become your language, not as punishment, but as presence. You mirror his withdrawal not with anger, but with calm detachment. Because here's what most don't realize. When you meet masculine avoidance with feminine stillness, you disrupt his unconscious pattern. Carl Jung taught us that we live through projections, and when he expects you to panic, to reach, to prove your value, but instead you meet his distance with peace, he's forced to feel. He feels the weight of your absence. He begins to project inward, not outward. And that projection stirs the anima, the part of him that recognizes emotional loss, not just physical space. The second shift is subtle, yet magnetic. You stop explaining, and you start embodying. You don't write a novel trying to clarify your heart. You don't send paragraphs hoping he'll understand. You let your silence carry the meaning. In Jungian terms, explanation belongs to the ego, to the conscious mind that demands clarity. But feminine energy speaks in symbols, in energy, in presence. And when you embody your self-worth instead of negotiating it, you move from explanation to embodiment. You become an experience, not a conversation. And that haunts him far more than words ever could. The third shift is this: withdraw not to punish, but to purify. You don't go cold, you go inward. You don't disappear, you return to yourself. Because every time you react to his silence, you abandon your own voice. But when you choose the quiet, when you sit with your own ache instead of filling it with his crumbs, you reclaim sacred emotional space. You create a vacuum, and in that space he meets the shadow, the part of himself he was trying to avoid. The shame, the regret, the weight of what he refused to feel when you were right in front of him. You withdrawing creates contrast, and contrast creates clarity, not just for him but for you. Suddenly, you're not wondering if he's thinking about you. You're wondering why you made his inconsistency mean something about your worth in the first place. And that's when you break the cycle. The fourth and final shift is this: live in your feminine, but not in reaction to him. You don't dress to get his attention, you dress like you're in love with your own mirror. You don't pose to prove you're fine, you are fine, because your joy isn't performative. You stop trying to be seen and start seeing yourself. Jung called this individuation, the sacred process of becoming whole within, without needing external validation to prove your value. And when you do this, when your radiance is rooted in authenticity, not reaction, he feels it in his bones, in the quiet hours, in the spaces between texts, in the mirror he avoids. That's when it haunts him, because he doesn't just miss you, he misses the version of himself he could have become next to a woman like you. Let these shifts live inside of you. Don't rush to implement them like tactics. Let them rise from your bones, like truths you've always known but were never taught to trust. Because when a woman stops performing and starts returning to her calm, to her knowing, to her radiant, receptive, rooted self, she becomes unforgettable, and that is what keeps him up at night. Not the silence alone, but the silence coming from a woman who finally realized she never had to beg for what she already is. Stay soft, stay sovereign. and let your absence become the echo of your worth. If he's ignoring you, it doesn't mean you're unworthy. It doesn't mean you're forgettable, replaceable, or less than. It simply means he's not ready to meet the kind of depth you carry inside of you. And that's not a reflection of your failure. It's a mirror showing you how much you've outgrown the need to convince someone to see you. What haunts a man at night isn't your message left unread. It's the absence of your energy once you've pulled it inward. It's the stillness of your love when it's no longer reaching for him. It's the echo of what he once had access to and now doesn't. That's what lingers in his chest when the world is quiet. That's what memory does when it meets a woman who once offered him warmth without condition. You see, he may not respond to your text, but he will respond to the void you create when your light no longer shines in his direction. And it won't be your anger that lingers. It will be your absence, not as punishment, but as a natural consequence of your healing. Carl Jung spoke of the unconscious, the parts of ourselves that hide in the shadows, untouched, unseen. And when a man avoids connection, he's often avoiding the vulnerable boy inside of him, the one terrified of intimacy, terrified of losing control. But the moment you stop reacting, stop trying to decode his silence, and begin choosing yourself with quiet certainty, you awaken something in him. Not just guilt, but realization. Realization that he lost something rare. Not because you punished him, but because you finally broke your own pattern. You stopped chasing emotional crumbs, hoping they would turn into love. You stopped rewriting your worth through someone else's behavior. And that shift, that awakening, is the real power. This isn't about playing games or making him suffer. It's about breaking your unconscious patterns, the ones that told you love must be earned, that attention equals validation, that your softness must bend to gain closeness. You are not here to convince anyone of your value. You are here to remember it. And from that remembering, everything changes. You become a woman rooted in her own center. Not cold, not bitter, just clear. Not hardened, but held by herself. And that clarity, that quiet strength, it becomes magnetic. Because true feminine energy doesn't beg. It beckons. Not through words, but through embodiment. Individuation, Jung's highest form of self-realization, is not about becoming who he needs. It's about becoming all that you are, without shame, without shrinking, without shape-shifting to be chosen. And the irony is this. When you stop needing to be chosen, that's when you're remembered. When you stop needing him to reply, that's when your absence starts to speak. So if he's ignoring you, don't ignore yourself. Return to the parts of you that ache. Hold them, love them, and let your healing be the very thing that haunts him. Not because it was meant to, but because he will one day realize you offered him a once-in-a-lifetime chance to meet himself through your love. And he wasn't ready. But you're not waiting anymore. You're rising, not from revenge, but from remembrance. You are soft, sacred, and strong. And the next man who gets to witness you will never have to be haunted. Because he'll know what he's holding. If this message touched you, subscribe. Tell me in the comments what parts spoke to you most. And share this with a woman who's forgetting how powerful she is. She may not say it, but she needs to hear this. You are not the silence. You are what remains, even when it falls quiet. And that is what makes you unforgettable.